You've tuned in to the Gritty Birds podcast, and I'm your host, Jenny Wren. Gritty Birds is an insider's view going behind the music scenes, profiling the personalities and insights of the grittiest of the industry, the unsung heroes running the game. Gritty Birds is sponsored by Vortex Music Magazine, with new episodes up every Tuesday. This week, we're featuring entertainment lawyer and champion of the local music scene, Peter Vaughan Shaver of Sound Advice. If you've ever had a question about law and music, your answers are here today. Let's have some fun. All right, so today I have in the studio Peter Vaughan Shaver, and he is a lawyer with, what's the name of your company?
Sound Advice, LLC.
Yes, and how long have you been doing law in Portland?
Since 99.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I call myself an arts and entertainment attorney.
Okay.
So a lot of what I end up doing is anybody doing anything creative for a living, it's kind of, but it's a focus on music and focus on visual art and stuff like that. But I probably do about 80% just music and entertainment law.
Are you ready?
Sure thing. Hit me.
Okay. First one, naughty or nice?
Both. Can I qualify that too?
Sure.
All right. I wouldn't have a gig if people weren't naughty. So if people are out there being naughty, I'm like the guy they bring in to fix stuff. So that's good. And the nice part is I do it in a nice way. So people don't know I'm this, like, not this aggressive attorney. Not like a really aggressive, like, mean asshole, but I'm a nice guy. So I can fix problems in a nice way for other people being naughty. And I can come across as being naughty if I need to. So I hope that works.
Naughty and nice. I think as a lawyer, you kind of have to be.
Yin and yang, baby.
Yin and yang. Yeah. Text or call?
Call.
Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
Facebook.
Would you rather be blind or mute?
Mute.
Fight or flight?
A little bit of both.
Okay. 3 words you'd use to describe Portland.
Quirky, natural, passive-aggressive.
3 words you'd use to describe the Portland music scene.
Quirky. Quirky, multifaceted. That's a kind of a compound word, but I'm only counting that as one. Okay. And underrated.
Underrated, I agree. What is your favorite thing about the work that you do in music?
I think my favorite thing is really just feeling like I'm part of the process. A lot of what I do is if you've got someone who's a pure creative spirit, for me to come in and help them do some of the take care of the business stuff. I mean, They call it the music business. So let them do the music, let me help out with the business stuff. If I can help alleviate some of that stuff or help them structure their realities or do enough kind of what I call preventative dentistry, the people doing their copyrights, getting hooked up with ASCAP or BMI. So it's kind of like that structure, getting people set up on there to enable them to do more pure creative stuff while I help them on the back business end. And then I feel part of the process, and people are so appreciative of that. And for me, a really good day is when somebody sends me or brings in a new copy of their CD, and there I am in the liner notes, like my awesome attorney. So that you are part of that process. Yeah,
for sure. That kind of leads into the next question. On a daily basis, what are some of the common things that artists come to you for advice about?
It all comes down to copyrights and contracts. So basically, usually somebody has some intellectual property that they want to protect, or they have some tussle that they're getting into with either fellow band members or they're leaving a band. I do these kind of what I call divorce things for people leaving bands. A lot of it's copyright and trademark registrations, and a lot of it is reviewing various types of contracts. So publishing contracts, things like I do a lot of licensing work, so people are presented with those kind of things. So I'm either asked to review those things or to generate them myself. So they say, I need a contract for this, and I spend some time putting that together for whatever specific purpose they might need something for.
Okay. So somebody actually asked, I put up a post to see any questions, and they did ask about copyright. A licensing company versus you, what kind of ends of it are a little more specialized in with what you do?
Yeah, so licensing companies will typically be out there beating the bushes to try to find opportunities for artists to place their music in things like TV shows, films, commercials, video games. So that's a very particular thing. They're trying to work music supervisors and folks at ad agencies to try to do those placements. I get involved more in the end of, hey, we got this deal. Can you review the contract? And sometimes it's the contract with the agency, and sometimes it's the actual, hey, this national TV show wants to use one of my songs for something, and I'll either review the contract or draft something up for that. So there's two ends I kind of get involved with.
So you kind of have a partnership sometimes with the licensing companies too then, I guess.
Sure. I'm always referring people to licensing agents or working with agents that handle my clients' stuff. A lot of them, there's a couple. I have one really big client named Zoe Keating, who's kind of like an avant-garde cellist who does a lot of placements for TV and movies and dance performances and things like that. And she has an agent, and the agent basically gets the deal, and then they kick the contract over to me to review and to vet and to engage with the other side if we need to negotiate things. They just handle the placement aspects. I handle the legal back end on it. So,
I learned something new today. What are some of the simple ways that artists can protect themselves on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about before with the preventative dentistry aspects of things. The chief one is copyright registrations. And with musicians, they always have to know that there's two types of copyrights. There's a sound recording copyright and a song composition copyright. People often just say my copyright or talking about my song, but it's really a two-part thing. So it's nailing that stuff down, filing those applications, getting those registrations done, and then things like just not signing anything you don't understand. I spend a lot of time cleaning up messes when, oh man, I wish you'd asked me about this up front because I could have saved you a lot of time, a lot of headaches, a lot of sleep, and a hell of a lot of money if you'd just come to me up front. So kind of goes both ways on that too.
What was the last show you saw?
Last show I saw was Holy Grove. A bunch of metal bands, Disenchanter, Ancient Warlocks over
Portland
at the
bands,
Tonic
right?
Lounge. A couple of them were. Yeah, Ancient Warlocks is from Seattle, but I saw them on the Tonic last week. I have kind of a standing thing. I work with folks in every genre, literally, and I always just say, "Let me know when you're playing. I will come out and see you." And I always get out and see. It's kind of like having 600 children who will have recitals at different times. And luckily in Portland, I literally have clients playing every night. So to me, I sometimes go out 4 nights a week to see live music, and it's always part of it's my own head stuff I'm into, and part of it is the recitals for my kids. So,
last album you bought?
Last album I bought. I go to a lot of yard sales, and it was, I believe, a Jimmy Smith album. I can't remember the name of it, but he was this very hip Hammond B3 player from the 60s and 50s who put out if you ever see that stuff, it's really cool.
Okay. Before you were 18, what were a couple of your favorite bands?
Number one was the Beatles. I liked Elton John a lot back in the day. Started to get into Springsteen, a lot of that stuff, just kind of 70s FM radio stuff. So the stuff that's still classic hits when it was just coming out. It was a little freaky to think about that like that.
Who are some of the artists you gravitate toward now?
Now I like stuff. I'm a big gospel and blues fan, so I go back and listen to a lot of stuff from. It's kind of excavating the past. I had this discussion with my girlfriend the other day, saying I'm not really into any new music. I'm into old music, stuff that is not popular, nobody's ever heard. I want to go dig into that stuff. Yeah. And I do a lot of work with a couple reissue record labels. There's a psych label I work with. I do a lot of stuff with Mississippi Records and a few others, Tompkins Square Records. And they do a lot of these reissues of just very strange things. That's the kind of stuff I'm kind of more into these days.
Yeah, that's really cool. Light in the Attic was one label that
great label.
Friends of mine interned from when I used to live up in Seattle, and they put out some. That was how I got into Betty Davis.
Oh, Betty Davis, yeah. I know
Speaking of,
crazy stuff. But those labels are great, and there's so much stuff, especially things on vinyl that have never really come out. I'm always finding stuff at yard sales that's just the weirdest damn records you've ever seen that probably don't even exist digitally various places.
Let's jump there. What's probably an album that you found that was one of the most unique?
Most unique.
Unexpected. So you picked it up and you were like, what did I just get myself
all right.
into?
This is one I found at a yard sale last year. It was an album of glass harmonica songs. there was this whole thing on the back of the label saying, or the back of the packaging talking about how Ben Franklin invented an instrument called the glass harmonica.
What?
And it was basically this kind of spinning thing with these glass discs on it. And you wet your fingers and you put them on it, and it makes these kind of eerie sounds. Your fingers, if you've ever done that around the rim
Like
of a
similar
glass.
to a theremin, or?
Similar sonically, but
Okay.
it's this very like Ben Franklin invented the thing, and it was a whole album's worth of glass harmonica stuff. And they were talking about how at certain times, like, the music was outlawed because they thought it was too satanic.
Oh, that's
Like,
really funny.
yeah, so stuff like that that's just kind of like, what? Like really weird out there things that like, all right, I'm sure this isn't out on CD anywhere, but...
One of my favorite podcasts recently is Sound Opinions, and one of the things that they do is about, like, if you were to choose any record, they do the the island concept. Or I remember in when I was in elementary once, there was a if you had to go to another planet, like, what book would you bring? What would be an album that you would bring?
Desert Island Disc type thing?
Kind of thing, yeah. It's using their concept. I'm not stealing it, I promise. I guess I kind of am.
Part of me struggling with this because I could like try to come up with a cool answer, but I think one of my answers would be like "Some Girls" by the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
I just love every song on that record, and it's kind of cheesy, but it's fun as hell. And it's one I just keep going back to over and over and busting out like when
Nice.
it's like comfort food. It's comfort
Yeah,
music.
it's
I bust
comfort
that out
food.
when I want to hear like that thing that's like, all right, get into this, you know.
Follow-up question. Can I get sued for asking that question?
Not at all. This is all
Sweet.
This is commentary and maybe news reporting.
Okay,
And if you're
alright.
just talking about it in kind of a referential way where you're not like selling it or kind of commercially doing anything with it, you're cool.
Thanks for that. Morning commute. Do you like talk radio or music?
I hate talk radio. All I listen to is either classical or jazz in the morning. Mostly classical because I just don't need any words at all. And a long orchestral piece that's slightly upbeat or kind of baroque or a little bit Bach-y, that's great to get the morning going for me.
KMHD, or do you have jazz records that you
KMHD.
particularly like? Yeah.
KMHD for jazz, and I can't remember the call letters for the classical station, but
can't either.
it's amazing. They're
Okay.
really great.
Yeah. Can you tell me a joke?
In theory, yes. No, and I listen to a lot of comedy, so it's kind of like I could do a whole Dave Attell routines for you, but
Oh,
I
okay.
can't, or Dimitri Martin, but I can't do
A single joke?
No.
That's really, really funny. This is a fun one. Would you rather only wear 80s clothes or only wear 80s hairstyles?
80s hairstyles because I had hair back in the 80s. I'll just leave it at that.
I was just going to say, what was your hair like in the 80s?
Oh, I had lush, beautiful, long hair that was parted in the middle. It was like the total, like, okay, Eric Estrada on that cop show. You know, it was kind of like that. With
Wow.
or you know what? It was the Vinnie Barbarino kind of thing. The early John Travolta kind of.
Oh, I'm
like
picturing it. I see it.
feathers
It's
and stuff.
beautiful.
I have some lovely pictures when I had more hair. I still have a little bit.
But you have nice thick hair. I'm not surprised about this at all.
Yeah, it's just migrated.
My dad always says
Sadly.
it's low maintenance.
Yeah, getting lower all the time.
If you could give a piece of advice to you at 18, what would it be? Or another one somebody also recommended was if you could give a piece of advice after law school, like right after law school versus now. Let's go there. Let me rephrase it so I can edit it. If you could go back to Peter right after law school and what you thought you knew then and to what you know now, and you could say, hey, Peter, this is my advice to you, what would it be?
There'd be two bits of advice. The first would be, your personality will come back. Don't worry about it. The other is, forget everything you learned or unlearn it and, just go out there and do it.
That's good. I like that a lot. I want to come back quickly to that whole copyright thing because recently there have been a couple high-profile lawsuits and rulings, Sam Smith versus Tom Petty, which was settled outside of court, and Marvin Gaye versus Pharrell and Robin Thicke. And I'm curious about I want to talk about that just a little bit in detail. So what's your opinion on those rulings?
I think they were both good. I mean, there was only a ruling in that second one, but I think the Sam Smith case, if you heard those songs side by side, they were pretty damn similar.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, there was actually a really high-profile case with George Harrison, who copied a song by, I think it was the Chiffons, He's So Fine became My Sweet Lord, and he got sued for that. And his whole thing in court was just like, I don't know, it was just in my head. There was this melody and it came out a different way. And I think for a lot of songwriters, you get into that business because you're influenced by something, but there are all these subconscious things that come out sometimes, and maybe sometimes more overtly than others. But so you have to be super careful with that. But the test that they would use for copyright infringement is, would an average person listening to those songs side by side, an ordinary observer, see that they're similar, or that second one wouldn't have happened without that first one. So I think the Sam Smith thing was, oh, dude, we need to talk, pretty close. And then the Marvin Gaye thing, I think, was a really good decision. And people get confused about how much you can borrow or be influenced by things. I know it when I see it, and people ask me all day long, can I do this, can I do that, what do you think? And I will have an opinion about that. Or I will give them this is a 6 out of 10 in terms of infringement, or a 10 out of 10, don't go there kind of thing. And a lot of people think they can get away with things. A lot of musicians still want to sample things, but the laws are very well settled as far as what you can and can't do with sampling. So I think they got caught, and they're going to pay $7.4 million. So you're bad.
Yeah, so in that, one of the conversations that I've seen from artists that I know in Seattle and Portland has been what that means for artists moving forward. Do you think that this is a judgment that's going to create a lot of copyright issues going forward? Do you think that it's kind of those two came together at once and created a big fervor, but that's going to go down? What do you see possibly it changing or happening going forward?
These things come up all the time. It's always going to happen. Next week there'll be another one. 2 years from now there'll be another high-profile thing. It's not going to create any more problems, and really the takeaway for creative people or songwriters is be creative. If it didn't come out of your own head, you should think twice about it. Or if you're going to license or sample somebody, you really have to do actual licenses for that. But, I'm a big fan of developing your own style, and creativity's endless. I mean, the raw materials you're working with are somewhat limited. There's notes, there's scales, there's patterns. I mean, everything in the blues has been done a million times. But at the same time, put your own spin on it. Do something creative. Do something new with it. People are always pushing boundaries, and I just think that you have to don't do what other people are doing. Stay away from that. But then something like a disruptor will come along, like Girl Talk. I cannot explain why that guy is still alive in terms of why he hasn't been
taken.
Snuffed out. But to recombine that stuff as brilliantly as he did is just amazing to me. But you just have to follow your own muse and do your own creative thing. That's the bottom line. That's the only way you can kind of get away with stuff.
Yeah. Hey, it's Jenny Wren here, taking a quick break from our home at Open Road Studios at the IPRC to thank everybody who took the time to make a donation on our Patreon page this week. Podcasts aren't free, including my rent here at Open Roads, hosting on SoundCloud, our logo designed by the talented graphic designer Tyler Busanich, and the support of our engineer Mike over at Mountain Air Studios. Go to www.patreon.com/grittybirds, GRITTYBIRDS, to donate today. Now let's get back to Peter. As far as, being in the law world, sometimes the joke is that lawyers are sleazy. But from your perspective, what are some of the sleaziest and kind of under the comfort level of human decency things that you've seen within the artist's end of things as a lawyer?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's all the way you have to have kind of a personal moral code.
Yeah.
I see myself as kind of a ninja in a certain way, or a samurai, where it's like you have to be above ground. You have to have a moral code. And there's lawyers that don't necessarily follow that. I don't do litigation because most litigators are really, it's unseemly and scummy, a lot of stuff that they do. In the music world, I've seen a million different things, from contracts that really were almost like slavery or just really oppressive terms. And I think that the music world has always been built on the fact that most musicians will not read or understand a contract, but they'll still sign it, and they get taken advantage of for stuff like that. So I have a constant crusade against that for people to really understand what they're doing and avoiding a lot of those kind of predatory industry practices. I'm still amazed. I still see a lot of really horrible deals. And my line with my clients is, I will bust your friggin' hand before I will let you sign that contract.
Yeah.
And sometimes they still sign it. And sometimes they call me back 3 years later and go, dude, why didn't you bust my hand when you said you were going to do that? And all I can say is, I told you so, grasshopper, and you didn't listen to me, you know.
On a completely opposite side of that, what are some of the very inspiring things? The opposite side of that, what are some of the very inspiring things that you've seen? You know, what are some of the more positive?
That's an easy one, and I think part of it is just what I call the Portland business model. There's a certain altruism and a certain artist friendliness that labels and other people, you can't screw anybody over in this town because people will find out about it. And that goes on a more global sense too, but I just think a lot of the labels I deal with, and I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of very good-hearted people here who get into the business because they want, either they're an artist and they had a bad experience, or they want to just do the right thing by artists. And even when I have to try to talk them out of things in their contract that are, in my opinion, not too artist-friendly, but something like it may affect the sustainability of the label to do business if you're too kind. But I'm always about enabling that, and just I love that impulse when you see somebody who's just like, I want to do the right thing. I want this to be a positive, equal experience going forward. And certain clients of mine have had artists that could have jumped to bigger labels, but they stayed with that little local label because they were cool, they were friends, and they know they were stand up about their business practices. And there's just a lot of love in this community. I'm not religious, but it's a blessing to be a part of the Portland music community because people are so supportive. You don't hear a lot about backstabbing or other things that happen in other scenes. And there's just this kind of general helpfulness that everybody exhibits here. And it's not true in every quarter, but by and large, it's a real pleasant place to do business because there is that ethical bedrock for the way people roll around here.
Do you think that is something that's going to help Portland in the long term, or are there aspects of it that you think Portland might change a little bit for us to become a sustainable community?
Oh, I think it'll totally help in the long run. And I think that it's interesting when I work with folks from LA or New York who come here and they're all just full of piss and vinegar and ready to run circles around all these sleepy slacker locals. But really what happens is they become more slacker, they become cooler, they mellow the hell out. And that's a nice thing to see where you're just like, see, you can still do business, you can still be aggressive in a pleasant, kickback kind of way and with those kind of ethics. So Portland conforms people. And I think that even though Portland's grown up quite a bit and is becoming more of a big city for better or worse, there's still a lot of that kind of goodness here, and I think going forward you're still going to see that. It's just the way we do business here. We're a volunteer community. Very much so. Yeah. Ability or superpower that you could wake up with tomorrow, what would it be? I'm stymied on that one too. That's one of those questions you answer wrong and I go egoist or whatever. Or like invisibility, you pervert, you know. I'd like to fly. I'd like to be able to fly. That'd be awesome. Cool. Yeah. Cut my commute time down. And how far is your commute? 3.5 miles. How many hours does it take you, though, a day? Like, how many hours is 3.5 miles in a day? 10. 10 hours? No, 10 minutes. Oh, that's not bad. No, because I set my own hours, so I go in at 11, and I usually come home around 8 or 9 or later. Oh, so you skip the commute. So there's no traffic. So it's just my commute is just a straight shot down Sandy Boulevard. I'm home in 5 minutes. Oh, perfect. Or sometimes 1.5 songs if I'm listening to music. 1.5 songs. Yeah, I like that. That's a quick really commute. Cool. Has a song ever changed your life? Yeah. Any details on that, or? Well, there's certain songs. I don't listen to the lyrics usually, which is kind of a running joke with a lot of people that know me. I'm more, if the music doesn't grab me, I don't care what the words are. It could be like that, like Charlie Brown, wah, wah, wah. It doesn't matter to me. But Downtown Train by Tom Waits. That song, it just hits me in the gut every time I hear it. It's so cracked and so intensely emotional at the same time. And I think there were times in my life when I was really depressed, where it was just having that rock, that one song, that kind of comfort music again, where you get back to it, but that one song was just a real, there's a certain sad hopefulness that goes with that kind of jibed with my mental state at the time. And I love that song to death.
To go into that, what was a time that you felt the most broken?
Probably my parents divorced when I was a young teen, and that took years and years to overcome that and to forgive my parents for being flawed humans.
Yeah.
Big life lesson all came out of that. So
what was it that helped you bring out of that, like in the whole lifetime? Like, what was it that made that be something that today you say you got through? Music. Yeah.
Music's always been my rock, and I have a room in my house where I have all my vinyl, a few thousand records, and I'll pull out a chunk every now and again and just kind of flip through them and just think about the stories behind all those things, or what was going on in my life. Like, I don't even have to listen to them. I just kind of paw through them, and all that stuff is very sustaining and very comforting. And when everything else failed me, music was always there. So it's nice to be I'll say there's a certain genetic destiny that I followed, as far as my dad was an attorney, and then so I kind of and loved music, and so that's kind of partly why I ended up here.
I almost wanted to go into entertainment law after I lost my voice.
It's interesting.
I imagine.
every day it's a freak show. It's a beautiful freak show.
Did you ever play music?
I played a little bit of guitar, and I knew too many people that could really play, and I just never had enough time was the big thing. I did a lot of sports when I was a kid, and did a lot of drugs after that. So and I probably could have still played guitar, but those were hobbies that took up a lot of time. And
Sorry, the second hobby's really cracking me up. That's really funny. Classic or modern?
I'll have to go with modern.
Dream vacation spot?
Bali, Indonesia.
Ooh. Okay, so I only have a few more questions, and I guess contracts and corporations are two big things within the law end as far as artists. We've talked a little bit about contracts, but I'm curious about what point would you recommend that an artist actually set up a corporation?
In the eyes of the law, you are a one-person corporation,
yes.
Even if you're just kind of doing stuff, especially for taxes, you're a sole proprietor. Generally when you have I set up a lot of LLCs for bands, and typically once you get to the point where you have some solid income streams, or you are touring a lot and have expenses that you want to write off against that other income, you can always do that, but having an LLC provides kind of a convenient umbrella for all those band activities, and for tax purposes, you can net things out and take those deductions for equipment and all that other stuff. So there's really no kind of triggering point, but it's more just like an organizational thing, or if the band becomes a brand or becomes a business, and then it's like, all right, we really have to think about this stuff rather than just stuff a bunch of receipts into that pocket of the van where we just, So there's no real triggering point, but it's a good thing to do if you have publishing income, if you've got gig income, all that kind of stuff to net out.
Speaking of all those receipts, one of the questions that somebody asked about was something that I wasn't sure if it was a law question or accounting question, was about how you figure out those write-offs and how you figure out those things. Are you a person you'd come to that for, or are accountants a better...
Either way, the general rule of thumb is if it's reasonably related to your attempts, not even actually making money, but your attempts to make money, then it can be a write-off. So for me, I go to shows, I buy, go to Music Millennium and drop a couple bucks on some CDs or whatever. All that stuff's a write-off. If I have subscriptions to music magazines, those are write-offs. I go to, if I have to go to New Orleans for some reason for client purposes or for research into industry trends, that stuff, if you can say it with a straight face, and there is some reasonable relation, or at least the percentage of that, hey, maybe I met a new client down there, or maybe I just saw a couple up-and-coming bands, so when I come back here, it helps my street credibility when I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw that band, or I saw a client play a show in New Orleans. So there's stuff like that. IRS, I hope you're not listening. Is that a black helicopter outside?
Hey, you're the lawyer. You're supposed to be the one that can say all these things with a straight face.
Yeah.
And you're doing a pretty good job.
There we go.
I can see some of the nuances, but having a lawyer is really expensive, and there's some really great organizations in Portland, like the Small Business Clinic, who I've gotten the chance to talk to. What would be like a couple contracts that you would recommend every band have in mind?
For bands, the most important one is a band agreement, just so you know how you roll on band decisions and money and everything along those lines. And bands, it's like being in a marriage. You're creating little babies. Like every album or every song you put out has a life of its own, and everybody needs to know where they stand vis-a-vis the ownership and control of that baby. And I think for a lot of bands, it's easy to get 4 or 5 albums into your career and not have an agreement, and then something happens, somebody leaves or whatever, and how do you figure that out? So I usually suggest on a project-by-project basis, bands say, okay, these were the songs we recorded, this is who wrote them, and this is the percentage of ownership, and then you file copyright registrations to cement all that stuff. So band agreement, most important. Other than that, a management agreement, if you're working with a manager, even if it's just a friend who gets a percentage of things, a contract with your booker, if you've got a booker, and other than that, maybe just a licensing agreement for general purposes. So if you are approached by somebody who wants to use one of your tracks in something, you'd have something handy to say, okay, cool, we'll just fill in the blanks on this, and we're good to go.
Okay. The world would be a better place if...
People walk their talk. It's, I like to say that successful living is avoiding cops, doctors, lawyers, courtrooms, hospitals, those places where it's just, a lot of times things are preventable. And I think that if you can just stay away from trouble and walk your own talk and really, I'd be out of business if everybody did that, but it would make a better world if everybody was cool about that stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much
Sure
for
thing.
coming down. It's fun to hear you. You're such a Portland warrior. I don't think I quite realized it until I heard you talk about it for a second there.
Well, it's a passion. I've lived here since 91, and this is, there's a reason I'm here, and there's a reason that why people flourish here. We attract a certain type of person who, like I said, there's people from LA and New York. They mellow the hell out when they get here.
I've heard LA's mellowing out.
Could be.
I've heard it's been mellowing out a little bit.
But it's
from
still,
the Portland people, of course.
But a lot of that still, there's that whole kind of money and what do you look like, what do you drive kind of thing there. Portland's so forgiving on all those levels. It really, the level of acceptance here, especially in the music thing, I mean, it's like mushrooms after the rain, man. Like stuff pops up here that could never happen other places because it's just this fertile music field. People are so open and accepting of new ideas and hey, a glockenspiel, who knew? Or just things happen here that are so cool.
There's going to be an album coming out from the glass bottles now. Someone's going to figure that
glass
one out.
Harmonica.
Glass harmonica.
It's going to be the new hipster instrument for 2016.
It's starting from here. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Sure thing. Take care.
We're done. Yeah. Thanks again for tuning in to the Gritty Birds podcast. You can find us every Tuesday at Vortex Music Magazine online at vrtxmag.com/grittybirds. Check out the website for great articles, reviews of shows, previews, and ticket giveaways to stay up to date on what's happening in music in Portland and the national scene today. You can follow us online at Gritty Birds, GRITTYBIRDS, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and support us at patreon.com/grittybirds. This week, we featured White Light by Catherine Feeney and Christianitas. You can find their recently released self-titled album online everywhere and see them at this year's PDX Pop Now Festival, which takes place July 24th to 26th at Audio Cinema. Next week, we're featuring Man About Town and all-around badass Theo Craig, talent buyer for Smoke Signals and Ron Toms, PDX Pop Now artistic director, host of Take It to the Bridge, and if he wasn't busy enough already, bassist for buzz bands Moss Cat Hawk. Stay tuned. Till next time.
To East Norriton.